What's going on, Poppers? Welcome to Poppin Predictions, where we believe movies aren't over at the end, but are meant to be continued. You're here with Andy Marqueze, where we ponder what happens in the story once the credits begin to roll. On today's episode, we'll be reviewing the movie The Whale. A reclusive, morbidly obese English teacher attempts to reconnect with his estranged teenage daughter. This movie is rated R for language, some drug use, some sexual content. As always, spoilers ahead. So, Marquise, you know, this is definitely a very interesting movie to say the least. I really did enjoy this one. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit more about what this movie's about, because I feel like the IMDb description really doesn't do it justice.
hmm
So, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I saw this movie when it first came out, right? Like a few months ago, whatever. So basically, in this film, what you get is this man played by Brendan Fraser. His name's Charlie. This man who's morbidly obese. I can't really get up off his couch. Needs to get like a walker to walk and everything like that. Can barely walk actually, if I remember correctly. And he is like very much just like a hermit. Like just lives in his apartment. He like watches TV, reads, and eats food. That's like really all he does. And then like he has a friend slash caretaker who helps him out, like will bring him food and like bring him stuff from the outside, and it's kind of there as like a emotional support because you could tell that he doesn't have anybody. You learn very
Right.
early on that like he has like an ex-wife and like a daughter or whatever, and that like something happened, but like you're not really sure initially what exactly happened, just that something happened. um and that's why he's like no longer married or whatever. And that the semblance that he was always kind of like a bigger guy, but then like since getting divorced and all that stuff like that, he just kind of like completely let himself go. And yeah, it's just like a very, very sad story of him basically just like eating away his life and just feeling like no one loves him or cares about him. And just kind of like slowly dying away in his apartment. While the story is kind of follows his, I guess, last few days or weeks, I
Yeah,
guess I
his
would
like
say.
last week
Yeah,
alive.
basically his last week alive, and just like the different people he meets. And like you have like very few characters in this whole movie. So it's mainly him and then I guess his friend Liz. But then you see his daughter Ellie a couple times, and then there's just like this missionary guy who's like trying to help or save him,
Yeah.
Thomas. But like that's really about it. You got like four people, five people in this movie. Um, and yeah, it's just like a very kind of sad like story just on like his last week, and like him just trying to like reconnect with his daughter, him trying to like apologize for his mistakes, and him trying to like find some semblance of like meaning or happiness in life or whatever. And yeah, it's a tearjerker. I'm just gonna be real. Andy hit me up saying watch it, forced me to watch this movie.
Yeah, I was really mad. I think what I really appreciate about this movie, there's a bunch of things that I really like about this movie. Um, one of the things that I think that Marquise did a really good job of going over, but I think something that just something that kind of helps set the tone of the movie is that one of the first things that you see, like one of when Liz is there, she's taking his blood pressure, and it's like 234 over 180, which I don't understand what that means, but uh you know
That's I've
it's
never seen
really
a blood
bad.
pressure that high
It's
ever
really
in my
bad
life. That's
after doing
wild.
some simple googling by both me and by Brendan Fraser, because Brendan Fraser, Charlie, uh he googles it himself, that like it pretty much means that you are going to die if you don't go to the hospital.
That's a heart attack levels. Yeah,
It's
100%.
like heart attack levels. Like he's like sweating profusely, and that's how he meets Thomas. Like Thomas comes to the door and like is like really there to just give him his spiel and then leave, but then um sees that he comes in and sees that Charlie is jacking off to gay porn.
Hmm
And then Charlie is like, read this essay to me. and he's like, what, why am I reading this essay to you, like why do I need to read this to you, and it like helps calm him down, and you're not really sure why this particular essay is the thing that like helps him. It is revealed later on, and we'll obviously talk more about it, but the essay is about like Moby Dick,
Mhm.
and like his like the just like the story and stuff like that. So the essay like calms him down. So it that one scene where he is getting his blood pressure taken and stuff like that really kind of sets the tone that like this is kind of his last week
Mhm.
alive, because he's refusing to go to the hospital no matter who's pressuring him, whether it's Liz or the ex-wife or his daughter Ellie. Like he is people are pressuring him to go to the hospital and he's just refusing to go to the hospital. But I think something that's like really remarkable about this movie is that, it's sad. It's a sad movie, but Charlie is such an overly positive person. Like he is just very nice while everyone else is either like very sad or very angry. He is just an overly positive
Mhm.
person.
Really
Just
sweet
trying to
guy.
really just trying
Really
to
sweet guy.
live the best of his life and push others to be the best that they can be.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. He
uh
has he has like a I find the relationship between him and his friend Liz to be like the strangest.
right.
Where like I mentioned before, she's his friend, but also kind of caretaker. Like I think she's a nurse, right? Or
Yeah.
she says she's a nurse.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of revealed that Liz, it's all they're all interconnected.
Hmm.
So what happens is that like Liz, that Charlie and his ex-wife, Mary, get divorced because Charlie starts dating one of his students,
Hmm.
and Charlie's student is Liz's
That's
brother.
right. That's right. That's right.
Um,
Yep.
and so like they're like all, and then Liz and the students, the ex lover boyfriend, his name is Alan. They are from like this church, like New Life. I think it's called New Life. Um, and so like New Life is very traditional, like anti LGBTQ, like just like if you are part of that lifestyle, like you are going to go to hell. Like that's just
Hmm.
kind of what it is. And so um Alan was never really able to fully live his life, much like how Charlie was ever never able to live his life. And I think that the story does a really great job of like showcasing like how important it is to be honest with oneself. I think honesty is like the key theme
Hmm.
throughout the movie, whether it's being honest with yourself, being honest to other people. Like that's what Charlie is trying to get when he is teaching students online. Like he is
Hmm.
pressuring them, like not pressuring them, but he is like really pounding in the fact that like it's important to be honest with your work, to be honest with yourself, to be just the think critically,
Hmm.
even if it's hard, and just live the most honest life that you can.
Yeah. No, that's yeah, like his spirit, his energy around him is 100% one based off positivity, based off being honest, based off like really like being who you are, and what's weird and sad to see, and like you said, all these people are interconnected in some way. And so Liz is like strongly connected with Alan because or not Alan, Charlie, because Alan, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, kills himself. That's like
Yes, he dies
they
by yeah, he dies by suicide.
yeah, and so they so that leaves Liz without her brother, but now she's friends with her brother's lover,
Right.
and so um she's there with Charlie, and like her relationship with Charlie is weird because like she's a nurse and she wants him to be healthier, so like not even on some like, you know, you need to be skinny. It's just like, no, like I need you to live. Like I just like I
Right.
want you to be able to live, and like right now you're not gonna survive it this way. So like you need to like be like and be like we need to like help you. But at the same time, you could tell she has this like complex dilemma because she also like notices that like he doesn't really have much. He doesn't really have anybody anymore. He doesn't have Alan because Alan's gone. He doesn't have his wife. Doesn't have his daughter. And so he like his only comfort is food. His only
Mhm.
happiness comes from food. And so she sees him like super depressed and whatnot. And so she continues to buy him like all the junk food and sweets that he wants.
Yeah. Do you think
Um,
that she feels guilty?
I think she does. I think that's the complexity. I think she feels
Right.
guilty about giving him the stuff while at the same time like not being able to not give it to him because she wants him to be happy. You know,
Right.
she wants him to like she hates seeing him sad because I would imagine that once Alan died, she like he was probably just so distraught and whatnot. And so she hates seeing him sad. She hates seeing him like in this like really like dark, nasty place, especially having such a bright spirit, such a happy
Right.
spirit, and then seeing him just kind of so like distraught and like just not doing well. And so I imagine she's like really torn between the two, but like ends up like giving him what he wants. And there's
Yeah.
one scene, like I said, I saw the movie when it came out, but there's one scene that super memorable what stuck out to me. It's like she's getting him food or whatever, and like I guess he always gets like a sandwich, like a big like roast beef sandwich. Like I remember when they say it, like they make it sound like extra like that. Like they're like there's like a double roast beef, like blah blah with this all the stuff in it or whatever. Like they make it sound like it's a heart attack in a sandwich, right? And then there's a scene where like she like gives him a sandwich and then she goes and starts doing the dishes like 5 feet behind him, right? She's like doing the
Yeah.
dishes and he's eating the sandwich and like he starts choking. And he's like choking and choking. And he's like about to die. Like this man is choking on the sandwich. And then she's not even noticing. She's just like doing the dishes, just kind of talking to him, blah, 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 blah. And then she notices she's not saying anything. So she turns around and then she finds him like choking, like on like suffocating, like from the sandwich. And so then she goes and like tries to give him the Heimlich and finally is able to get it out. And then she starts screaming at him, like, chew your food. Like, Jesus. She's like, just take time and chew, please. You almost
Yeah.
died. Like, if I wasn't here, you would have died right now. And like, and at first he's like she's like yelling at him like a child, like just completely like yelling in his face, like she's so completely unbelievably angry. I'm just like, how do you have this little care for your life? Like, how are you like this, like irresponsible? How do you not get it? You know? And then he, in this like really kind of sweet, charming way, it's like kind of like a little sad. And then he like kind of like laughs a little bit, laughs it off, plays it as a joke. Like you could tell he has a kind of spirit that like kind of wants everyone at the party to be happy or doing well or
Hmm.
smiling or whatever. So like he does like a little joke, and they kind of sit back in the couch and like cuddle and like watch a movie or something like that. And it's just kind of like I don't know. That scene like really got to me just because of
Yeah.
like the complex like emotion in the scene of just like her torn, her angry. She wants to be angry at him and wants to be really angry at him, but she just also wants him to feel comforted and like okay and like safe and all that. And so
Yeah.
like the emotions like every character's emotions with him is never straightforward. Like
Mm.
every
Yeah.
character, there's only like 4 or 5, but every character has a very complicated with him in this movie of like someone who's like killing themselves basically slowly. But like you don't know also how to help them either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this movie definitely has like a lot of like really powerful scenes. I think the scene with the ex-wife is really the only the ex-wife is really only she's talked about for the most part, but she only makes an appearance once in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But that one appearance, like I think, is really pivotal because you really get to see the dynamics between her and Charlie. She feels like a failed mother
Mm-hmm.
because Ellie is just not behaving well. Ellie's had a really hard life. Her dad's been absent for the past 8 years. She's also really smart, in the sense that like she's really understanding like what is happening in like real life issues. Like she really understood why her parents got divorced, why it was a huge problem. Um, Instead of like kind of like sugarcoating things, like she was very hard fixed in reality, and that like truth and like that reality really made her really tough and has like a hard exterior, but you could
Mm-hmm.
tell like there was probably underneath it. But that one scene, you can see that the mom, that the ex-wife, she is very like she's also very cold, very distant, and has like a kind of like a failures mentality towards Ellie, whereas Charlie is like the upbeat person, and Charlie even brings up how like he's there to balance it out. Um, and so it's just really cool to kind of see that dynamic, and also just kind of see how it plays out, because Charlie has been all Charlie has been doing ever since they got divorced is teaching English online.
Mm-hmm.
And he's even talks about this during the movie, that like all he spends his money on is food and rent. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
it, unless I'm missing some random expense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he's saving all of his money to give to Ellie for when he passes away. And so like that really comes into play, how like, the ex-wife is raising her, and Charlie's gonna give her the money. And I think Charlie has a sense of guilt that he is not a huger part
Yeah,
in Ellie's
definitely.
life. And you could tell it like he wants to make sure that she is good. And I think that that's like the really most powerful thing, is like he wants to make sure that he's good, that she's set up so that he can feel like he's done one thing in his entire life. If you like look up the whale and like look at images, you'll probably see an image of like Brendan Fraser as the whale, like raising his finger like number one. Because that is the scene where he's just like, I want to make sure Ellie is set up for success, and stuff like that. And he's using his last week alive to help. I think trying to get her to graduate high school is like, I think that's like an afterthought. I think that if it happens, that's great. I think that's what he wants ultimately. But I think that what he truly wants is for Ellie to have some sort of acceptance, as well as live an honest life, because she's
Mm-hmm.
not being honest in her papers. She's not taking school seriously. She's not living her true life to her potential.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that if he has that breakthrough with her, I think that that is the one thing that he needs to feel like he has made a difference on
Mm-hmm.
this time on Earth, and make things up to her.
100%. Yeah, he really, yeah, I agree that he feels guilty about not being in her life, and he feels like guilty about like it's once again it's a complicated feeling where it's like he loved Alan. Like
Yeah,
he doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't regret his relationship with Alan. Like he loved Alan, um, really misses him and all that. But he's also sad for like what that relationship cost him though. That
right. He
relationship
didn't
cost him
realize
his
it. He didn't realize that that was
wife.
going to cost him
It cost him
everything.
his daughter, it cost him everything. And so like all these people are just like bonded in like a strange sense. And then there's this missionary character. Can you like, cause yeah, like you once again, you saw this more recently than me. Like I remember the missionary character. I remember him like having, did he, I forgot, did he have an ulterior motive the whole time? Or was
Yeah,
he
kind of. So like
honestly,
Thomas's role is, he is serving as like the spiritual, like, advisor, I guess.
mm-hmm,
He's trying to save Charlie, um because that's just what he does as a missionary. He's trying to spread the word of the gospel.
mm-hmm,
But Charlie, um has had a really negative experience with the church, just because the church doesn't accept who he is. um and he even like talks to Thomas about how like he's read all the pamphlets that uh that the church has written, that he's
mm-hmm.
read the Bible multiple times. Like, he's pretty well versed with the organization, so he knows that the organization isn't right for him. But Thomas is there to really try to save him
Mm-hmm.
and help get through to him, and try to help get him through. But Thomas himself is also not a perfect person. He's not like the
Mm-hmm.
saint that he kind of paints himself out to be. He used to live in Iowa. and he was in a church there, and he would do drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And the church that he was a part of was very anti-drug, like you can't do that. And it was he was doing missionary work there, and something I forgot what it was, but like they ended up butting heads, and he was gonna go on a trip for them, but then ended up like stealing a bunch of money from them and
Mm-hmm.
then fleeing to Idaho. And so you see Thomas talking to Ellie, um, and Ellie is taking pictures of Thomas smoking her weed, um, and like taking pictures and sending it to the church, sending it to his parents, and there's this weird like debate over, is
Yeah, I want to get into this.
Ellie trying to punish him, or is Ellie trying to save him? And Charlie just kind of realizes that Ellie is trying to save him, because at the end of the day, at the end of the conversation, like Thomas realizes that his parents love him. The parents want to um that they just want him to come home. They
Mm-hmm.
don't really they understand that it's just the money. Like at the end, like that's what they told him, is that it's just money. You can come home. So Ellie, in her weird way, is showing that she is a good person underneath the that tough exterior.
That's what
Um,
Charlie believes. Like, let me
that's what
make this
Charlie believes,
clear.
and even
The,
that's what Thomas. I mean, I don't know if Thomas.
Charlie kind of convinces Thomas of this a little bit.
Yeah,
Because Thomas is mad at first, and then it's like, oh, like, well, they actually told me they still love me. They actually want me to come back.
yeah,
And so it ended up being something that led to something good, but were her intentions good? And this question comes up a few times. Because there's
right.
another time where Charlie's daughter Ellie sneaks Charlie like a sleeping pill, like
Mm.
multiple of them. So I can't remember what she's doing, but like I can't know if it's like steal something from him or take something from him or money or
She's
whatever.
like
But
sneaking through the house
he's
and
like just
looking
like
at
to get to the
stuff.
house and looking at stuff. And so like she gets a sleeping pill, which like could have killed him or whatever, right? And like multiple things. And so like, but Charlie the whole time refuses, absolutely refuses to believe that his daughter is bad or his daughter is like mean or wants to hurt people or whatever. And like you can just tell by his spirit, like he's probably have a hard time believing anybody would be mean because he just like feels like so positive and like happy and like other people like he just really sees the world from that perspective. And so especially with his own daughter, I think he's like very reluctant to believe that she's a bad person. This kind of comes to a head when the ex-wife finally comes into the picture.
Yeah,
And like Charlie's having a conversation with the ex-wife because the ex-wife is the only other person that knows Ellie really well. And Charlie's like, yeah, like she's a good kid. She does this. And Ellie, and then the wife is like, or ex-wife is like, no, she's not. Like she's not a good kid. Like she like does like some like bad stuff, whatever. And so it's weird. It's and you never actually get like an answer to the question. Like the movie just kind of leaves you like hanging in that tension of
mm,
like, is Ellie good? Does she do these things with good intentions? Or does she just like messing with people? Does she like pranking people? Does she like doing this? And we happen to get something good out of it. And like the movie doesn't really let you know. It kind of leaves it up to you to kind of decide like how you feel about that. Because she's obviously a child acting out in pain too. Like you
yeah,
could tell from the very first scene you see her that she's acting out because she's mad that like her parents are divorced. She's mad that she doesn't have a
yeah,
father. She's mad about all these different things, And so you could tell that like she is very much because like she's mean. She's really
yeah.
mean to
She's
Charlie.
very mean.
She's very mean to Charlie. And like she like tries to make him walk, knowing that he can't walk and like watch him fall. And like she is just incredibly cruel to him.
Yeah, she has like that a lot of like we were saying, like she has like a lot of like pent up rage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even like when uh she comes in asking Charlie for help, um, she like writes in her notebook like, this apartment smells, I don't remember the middle line,
Mm-hmm.
I hate everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Charlie found that to be like utterly hilarious. I think the reason why that was the case is because they had a huge conversation about the essay that she's writing is about Walt Whitman's poem.
Mm-hmm.
and he talks to her about how like I is used as a metaphor for like exploring like oneself,
Mm-hmm.
not just like using the word I as in like referring to me, but like I as in like fully exploring the image of self. So like saying that like I hate everyone is like fully exploring that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that Charlie just finds it utterly hilarious. And so you see bits and pieces of the armor chinking and like the
Mm-hmm.
cracks starting to form the more that the movie plays out. Because there's like a huge scene towards the end of the movie, or a huge moment towards the end of the movie, where Ellie is like finally changes gears and is like, I want you, like, she doesn't say this, but she's like, I want you to take care of yourself. I want you to go to the hospital and stuff like that. So you could finally see that he, through being constantly positive and stuff like that, like he has gotten through to her. I'm gonna cut that part off the air because that's we're getting dangerously close to what we do at the end here, folks. But um, I kind of want to talk to you about just like the overall, like how this story is told, because something that I feel like not a lot of movies do is like tell this type of story through like food and obesity.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would see a lot of this type of story told through like drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, like, if you feel like this movie would be different, or like how this movie would be different if it's told through like a different lens of like different sort of like societal, like trying to like not like norms, but like societal, like they like isn't viewed positively. Like
Yeah.
because obviously being morbidly obese in the societal lens is not viewed positively, same as like being like addicted to drugs and alcohol, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm curious like what your take on that kind of is.
Yeah, so I mean, one, I was just appreciative of like a different take. You just don't see this often.
Exactly.
Yeah, usually if like you would have this type of storyline where like, yeah, there's a guy, he ends up cheating on his wife with one of his students, male students at that, and his wife gets divorces him, his he doesn't get to see his daughter, all this like that. Like usually the story would lead, okay, now he's like a drug addict in this house, like not like, or whatever. And like it would be them trying to reel him back in from drugs and like all this stuff like that. But like they chose to use food instead. And I think that this is like a very, very real thing that just like doesn't really get attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like I'm a very big dude myself, very big guy, obese. And then like I remember a friend of mine who also I met in college who like both of us are just like, really big guys. He told me he watched this movie and he was like, man, that's hard to watch, especially as a big dude. Like it's a very, very hard movie to watch. Because it just makes you like you're just internalizing everything you're watching,
Mm-hmm.
and this whole thing. And like I remember when I watched this, and then like the whole time I'm thinking about me and my relationship with food, and like how often I use food to cope with, my frustrations in life, whether
Mm-hmm.
anger, sadness, like this different emotions going out of control, and like that, dopamine hit that food gives me, like kind of makes me feel better or calm me down or whatever. And like with the whale, it's just taken to the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And so for him, food is his only savior at this point. It's the only thing that really makes him feel good, which is wild because he has such a positive personality. It's not like
Yeah.
he's sad or mean all the time. Like he's very positive for where he's at in his life, or at least that's what he's like putting as a front. But
Yeah.
obviously he's dealing with like a lot deeper, darker demons. And that's how he just eats food to cope with that. And it's yeah, I think it was a very interesting way to tell the story and really good because like it's not like fat shaming or anything like that. Like I mean,
No.
I know some people like might have saw like that. For me, it's like it's not fat shaming, it's just talking about like a reality, and like this is like a story that like I've seen people in like this type of like situations, or whatever, and like though obviously I'm not like anywhere near that point. Like I can even like see myself in like just like minor versions of that, and just once again my relationship with food or like other like obese friends of mine. And so like it's a really interesting perspective that I feel like does not get told often. Usually
Mm-hmm.
when there's like fat people on screen or whatever, like it's like always the comedic, or like for like a funny thing or whatever, not for like a
Yeah.
really deep, sad story of someone who's dealing with like some very deep emotional and relational trauma that like they're trying to cope with and like just can't really find another way to cope or escape with it.
Yeah.
And regardless of the people in their life and how much they want them to turn things around, you know, this roadblock in front of them, this thing is just too large and it's too big to deal with. And so they could only just cope with it the only way they know how.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's because like, yeah, I remember like you get the hint through the story that like Charlie was always big, but wasn't until his divorce, which is a
Yeah.
very emotionally wrecking thing that like all of a
Well, it was
sudden
actually like when when Alan passed away
When
was
Alan passed away, that's what it was.
when
When
Alan
Alan passed
passed
away.
away, that's when the problem really dialed up.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that like if this was a normal story, it definitely would have been told more so through drugs, more than likely, or like having some drug addiction or like some like sex addiction or something else. But food just normally isn't the one, even though I would argue food's probably the most popular one in reality, or one of the most popular ones. You rarely get it shown on film. And so
Yeah.
I think it being shown on film of just to like the extreme and like what this man's going through, and like you like at no point, at least for me, once again, especially as being big to myself, like at no point in a movie do am I like blaming Charlie,
Mm-hmm.
like obviously it's his decisions. He's the one that's, his blood pressure is like a heart attack rages, but yet he's still just about to eat this like double big roast beef sandwich with all the stuff in it or whatever. And like he's still gonna eat all this like cookies and sugar or whatnot because things feel so lost for him. Like he feels like the person he loved is gone. Like all these things feel so lost for him, like he has nothing left to the point it's just like, screw it. Like, why not? Like, this is the only thing that makes you feel good. And like, even if it's killing me, it's the only thing that makes things bearable. And so, like drugs. And so it's just kind of like, I'm gonna keep doing this. And so, like, as much as like you're killing yourself, you also just feel like horrifically sad for him because you're just like, man, like
Yeah.
he really doesn't seem to have another way of escape. And like for your average person, like as I would tell anybody who they think should lose weight, like your average person would be like, well, just stop eating junk food, just stop eating fast food, just stop doing this, just stop doing that. But like when your emotional state is so distraught, and this is the only thing that that brings you comfort, and like you can't like do other things or like nothing else or whatever, and you feel like you're already so deep in this pit that there's no way out, so you might as well just keep going deeper. And it just is like this whole just like vicious cycle. And so like seeing it is just kind of like, man, like you almost feel the same way for Charlie that his friend Liz feels for him in a weird way, which is
Right.
just kind of way of just like, man, I really wanted to see you happy and do better, but at the same time, like you like not recognize that you were killing yourself. And it's just like
Yeah.
it's just really sad, really
Do you
sad.
feel like do you feel like food when if we take Charlie's situation, Charlie's story is probably similar to many other people who are in this situation. Do you feel like food is largely more accepted than drug use? Like if someone is like a drug
Oh,
addict versus someone who's food.
not even close, dude. Like
No?
it's well, like so I would put it this way, like one is just accessibility,
Right.
like yeah, you could drugs are pretty easy to find depending on like where you live, and like yeah, you could get them delivered to your house, but it's not like easy just with DoorDash or like any of these like pizza delivery services, or the fact that you can't go a mile without seeing a McDonald's, something like that. It's just kind of like the access to food over drugs and like to like junk food is just immensely more accessible than drugs. So that makes it a like very like tempting drug in itself, and just like how much of it you can have and how easy you can have it and how cheap you can have it. So
Mm,
like one, that's the thing. And then two, I think food is more acceptable than drugs until the visual starts changing.
right.
So once you get to someone that's his size, then that's when food becomes like, if you were to tell, like if you were just a big person in general, like just a big person, and you're addicted to food, and it's just like, yeah, like if you were to like ask somebody like, would you rather have me like big and addicted to food, or like me addicted to like cocaine or heroin or something like that. Like they would be like, oh, like food, like obviously, like you don't need to be doing those drugs. They're gonna hurt you, ruin your body, all this like that. But then when you see somebody his size, and the
Yeah.
fact that like he can't walk, he literally can't walk. Like, and then like his blood pressure is at heart attack levels. And then you ask them like, yeah, like what's it like? Is it like food or cocaine? And people would be like, I 1000% rather you do cocaine, or like 1000% rather you be a heroin addict,
Right.
because like you're like this food is like 1000% gonna kill you, And
Yeah.
so in general, I would say food is by far more acceptable, but food, once you get to like the like deepest levels of food addiction, it is like very visibly like concerning, more so than drugs are visibly. Like
Yeah.
unless you're, just my language, like the like classic image, like a crackhead on the corner, like skinning
Right.
and like scratching yourself and have all these marks. Like unless you're doing that, like how Charlie looked is way more concerning.
Yeah.
um so
And I
yeah.
feel like the way that the movie like kind of depicted his like obsession with food, I can't speak from experience, but I feel like it like showcases it in a very like accurate way. And I could be 100% wrong. And if I'm wrong, somebody pointed it out to me. But like I feel like you see him like eat a large bucket of chicken as like just like his normal dinner, but then you see like later on, like in the movie, when he has pizza delivered to him and he has like a relationship with the pizza delivery driver through the door, and they never really see each other until one day the pizza delivery guy Dan like stays back a little bit to actually see actually see Charlie. And when he sees Charlie, he's like disgusted, and like the word disgust is used throughout the movie to kind of describe Charlie, unfortunately. But so when Dan finally sees what Charlie looks like, you can see that Dan is like visibly disturbed by what he sees, which, you know, Charlie being the overly positive person, obviously he does have his flaws, his moments of weakness. And so seeing that he discussed people who he is friendly with and has a nice relationship with, like sends him in like a bender where he is like doubling up on the pizzas and
Just
really just like
shoving food down his
just
mouth.
shoving food down his throat, and just kind of like I feel like that is accurate. Like I feel like that would be how most people who are in that sort of have that sort of relationship with food would react when they sort of are feeling down,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's they feel like they are disgusting people, or they're just not in a right state of mind. Like I feel like his total reaction to that is really accurate. And so I just feel like this movie does a really great job of showcasing this without going over, like you've said, like
Mm-hmm.
without going in like a fat shaming sort of way.
Yeah. No, like I thought that scene was so accurate. Like once again, I've never been anywhere that extreme, but me and my like complicated relationship with food, like I've had moments similar. Like I've never been shoving slices of pizza just down my throat. Like that's wild. But like I've like I've definitely gone like after like something very emotionally distressing, and then just like went to a grocery store and just like got whatever sugary stuff I wanted, and then just like would like binge it for like a weekend or something like that, and just like
Mm-hmm.
you know like it's a very real thing because you just want to feel better. Like you feel so like horrible, you feel so sad, you feel so depressed or whatever, and like you just feel so distraught, and you're like, this is the only thing that gives me like that, like make me feel better. It gives me that dopamine to make me feel good or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like only reinforcing the problem, but it's still the only thing that makes you feel better. And so it's like it's truly addiction. Like it's addiction in the same way. Like I've heard, I don't know the truth of this, so I'm not a doctor or any of that stuff, but like I've heard people say like sugar is more addicted to cocaine,
I've
stuff
also
like that.
heard that too.
So it's just kind of like I would 1000% believe it, especially when you talk about accessibility. Like it's just so easy for him to get junk and sugary food, and so yeah, that scene I remember was really sad. I remember like yeah, like the pizza guy's looking at him in disgust. And then so Charlie just immediately goes to like shoving pizza down his throat and like whatever other like food he can in order to feel better. And like he really is really sensitive to like people viewing him. So like
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned earlier, he teaches like an online class, like an online English class or whatever. He keeps his camera off. He won't turn on
Yeah,
his camera. Like and that way they can't see who he is or what he
yeah,
looks like. Because he feels like if a student sees what he looks like, they're no longer gonna like listen to him, respect him, or
yeah.
care
And
about him.
just like another example of him not living his honest self.
Yeah, you know, and he's just like ashamed, like the amount of ashamed he is for like how he looks or whatever. And you know, he's it's weird because yeah, because like how like happy and go lucky he is, you would almost think that he's like not aware of his situation, but he's like hyper aware of his
He's
situation,
super aware. Like
and
he's
like
yeah.
and he's able to like kind of keep this. See, I don't know. So like, what do you think? Do you think it's a legit like happy spirit personality, or do you think he's just putting on a front?
I think he's genuinely a very positive person.
Mhm.
And I think that that's the case because he, throughout the entire film, like, I know if I was in that situation, that like I would find it very hard to keep maintain this front
Mhm.
that he has, whether it's like, like the daughter just being ridiculing him, the daughter posting pictures of him saying that there's going to be a grease fire in hell when he dies. And I think that that's the kind of stuff
She
that
was mean, dog.
she was
She
mean.
was mean.
Like, I think that I think that's just naturally who he is, and I think that that's how he's always been. He's always
Mhm.
had been that positive person. Like when Mary mentions that it's so weird that he's positive all the time. Like he's like, I have to be the positive one. Like you're not. So
Yeah,
I don't think that it's a front. I think that's just genuinely who he is.
yeah. I would say so. It's wild that people act very differently when they're stressed. So for
Yeah.
him, he like leans towards food and like tries to like make light of the situation, make everyone smile and happy when things are stressful. His daughter, when she's distressed, she tries to ruin lives. Like
Yeah. She just lashes out.
she lashes out angrily, you know. And it seems I could, from what I remember, like she might get that from her mother because her mother, like you only see her one scene, but like her mother was very like angry at Charlie and you know
Yeah.
very distraught and whatnot, and like just like fed
Well,
up.
she
Like,
also had like a moment of clarity and like
mm-hmm,
I don't know if peace is the right word, but during that scene, she talks about how she saw Alan later on in his life. I don't know if Alan, it wasn't super clear to me if Alan was sick, but there was something mentally going on with him that led to him take his life, whether it was depression or something else. But in any event, Mary's mentioned
oh, it was
that,
depression. Remember? Because like I remember that's why his sister hates the church because the
oh,
church kind of
true,
like bullied him for being
right,
gay, and then the whole thing happened.
right, right. But she saw Alan in like a Walmart parking lot, I believe it was,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and she wanted to be angry at him. She wanted to like lash out and yell at him, and instead of choosing anger, she chose compassion because she saw that Alan was struggling
Mm-hmm.
with like the bags and helped Alan to the car, and they had like a pleasant, like a normal conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about how she really wanted to yell at him for and like go lay into him for what he's done to her, but she realizes that Alan is probably going through his own things, his own demons, and instead of taking vengeance out, kind of just chooses compassion. It's nice to have that conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's tough, dude. It's tough. Yo, you wanna explain people the last few scenes in this movie?
yeah, definitely. So the way this movie ends, throughout the movie, it's kind of like a countdown because it starts off with one of the first things you see is Sunday, and
Mm-hmm.
then like throughout each scene, like not each scene but throughout the different scenes, it transitions to different days
Mm-hmm.
throughout the week, and so you finally get to Friday. Um and Ellie comes over. Actually, everyone's over. Liz is over, Ellie's over, and Liz is having a conversation with Charlie, Ellie comes in, she's like, this paper gave me an F, like you failed me. And like Liz actually before that like leaves, goes downstairs, and they're having a conversation. And he's like, you never read the essay. And so she like realized that she never read the essay. So she starts reading it, and she realizes that it is the Moby Dick essay that she wrote when she was 8 years old. And this is when you find out that the reason that he truly holds on to that essay is because he felt like Ellie was being honest and authentic and truly going against the norms, because the Moby Dick is like a widely acclaimed novel
And reviewed many
that
times.
that everybody loves. And she kind of like not trashes it, but like, she's not she's very critical. And the way that she is critical is, it's constructive. It opens up a dialogue, a conversation. And so that's why Charlie has kept it. It's like he really appreciates the honesty within it.
Mm-hmm.
um and so um Charlie is kind of going through his final moments. She is like, you could tell he's having a heart attack, and he's like, read the paper. And she's like, why do you want me to read the paper? And she's like just read it. And so she's standing there, she starts reading the essay, and you see Charlie like start mustering up the strength to stand up, to start walking over. And
And he's
something that
really trying.
he's really trying. And something that we didn't talk a lot about, because it really wasn't, it's significant, but like kind of a smaller detail, is that like Charlie brought up the fact that like they took a trip down to Oregon, and that was like the last time that he felt water, or felt the ocean water.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see Charlie like muster up the strength to stand up without the walker, without the wheelchair, just like straight up stand up. And then you see him muster up the strength to start walking. And then you see it kind of like fade white, and you see brief moments of the beach. And all this is happening while Ellie is reading her essay to him. And the movie kind of just like, once you see the beach, it kind of just like fades out to the credits. And you don't really, it's implied that Charlie dies, but you don't actually see Charlie die.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, there were like some pretty significant things that I didn't mention, like him turning on his camera, like in a class, so that like, he can start being honest with his classmates, not his classmates, his students. Um, and it's a really powerful ending. I right when that happened, and Marquise mentioned this earlier, but like right when that happened, I was really mad at him for having me watch this movie, because
It's a
it's just
tearjerker.
it's a real tearjerker. Like my parents my parents told me that, my parents saw this movie when it came out, and they were telling me how like it was a really depressing movie. How like, it's just really sad. And whenever my parents tell me that a movie's depressing, I always take it with a grain of salt, because they also told me that Manchester by
I
the
was going to
Sea,
say, I remember when we did
uh
that review.
they were telling me that Manchester by the Sea is also like a very sad movie. And I'm not taking anything away from Manchester by the Sea, but like,
This was more depressing, in my opinion.
this was more depressing. This was definitely way more depressing. Um, um, so it was just really powerful. And so for me, I think, if we're thinking about what happens when the credits begin to roll, I think that it's really hard to think of a movie or think of it like afterwards that he lives. Like I think that is like the final, like his final memory, because it was a good memory. His
Yeah.
final memory is of him at the beach with Mary and Ellie as a kid as he passes away.
Mhm.
And I think that moment where Ellie is reading the essay and having this experience with her father, I would like to believe, and maybe we'll have differing opinions here because you're usually more pessimistic about things than me, but I would like to believe that that Ellie having this experience, I think it's a breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Ellie, I don't know if it's like a full 180, but I think that she starts gradually living a more honest life. I'm not necessarily saying that she's going to go on and pass high school and stuff like that, but I think that she starts living a more honest life in the memory of her father. Um, I think that she realizes that the money isn't important. It was that week long connection with him.
Mm-hmm.
Because during that whole conversation, Ellie is like, "Let's call 911. Let's call for help," and he's like, "No." And the reason it, though never explicitly said, actually it is said, but the reason that he doesn't get to call the hospital is because he believes that the money, it's her money,
Mm-hmm.
and so he doesn't want to use that money to pay for the hospital bills, because that's the one thing that he can leave behind to her, as well as the lessons. So I believe that Ellie kind of, I think that she turns her life around. I think that it's obviously like a gradual, like making smarter decisions. It's not like an overnight, like I'm going to be as positive as Charlie sort of thing. But I think that she having this week to kind of connect with him really helped her. I'm not going to say give her a sense of closure, but really helped her. And I think that she's going to continue to make smart decisions and live a better life. I would love to know your thoughts. I would love to hear you say how wrong I am. But what do you think? What do you think?
All right, my first question,
Okay, what's
before I
up?
even get into it, actually, do you consider this a happy ending or not?
A happy ending. I think that because he was going to die. Like there was no, the whole movie is about him dying. Like throughout, like it's not like that's like this, that's not the central theme, but like I mean I guess it is this kind of the central, one of the central cores of the movie is that like he's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So him dying is somewhat expected, or even though we don't see him dying, like I think it's pretty clear that he's
Mm-hmm.
going to die. Um so I don't think that him dying makes the movie sad because it's expected. And I think that part of what that part of the ending of the movie that makes it so powerful is to me what makes it somewhat a happy ending. What about you?
So I don't know if I would consider it a happy ending, or I mean, to me, it's obviously sad. Like it's very sad.
Of course.
It's like a sad happy ending. Like you're happy in the sense that like. So the beginning of the movie starts, as we mentioned, with like him about to have a heart attack, and he has this missionary read him this poem or whatever, this paper essay on Moby Dick. And then the movie ends with his actual daughter reading him the essay, or whatever. And it always makes him feel better, right? It always brings
Right.
him back down to like center or whatever, whenever something's going wrong. Or no, that's not what it was. Actually, the reason he wants it read to him is because if he feels like he's about to die, he remember
He wants that to be the
he
last thing
wants
to
that to be
hear.
the last thing he heard. So whenever
Right.
he thinks he's about to die, he's gonna read or listen to that poem or whatever. And so, which God, it's just depressing when I think about it. But yeah, so like towards the end of this movie, like he's feeling like he's on his way. So he tells Ellie, like read this, like read it. And then he gets up and starts walking, and it's like the amount of pressure that's on this man's body, like his body just can't take it. And so he is like, listening to her say this, and she's crying as she's like reading it or whatever. And then he walks off, and like, yeah, it would have been really sad to like see him like fall, collapse, bam, movie's over. But instead, you see his feet kind of like start to like float or whatever, if I remember correctly, and like it's like he like kind of like goes away and then like dies or
Yeah.
whatever, with like the image of like the beach or whatever with his like ex-wife and daughter. And it's I mean, in a weird way, at the very least, if he got the death he wanted.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he would have preferred to die any other way than with his daughter
Exactly.
right there and her reading that poem to him, or as I her reading that essay to him as he dies. and her voice and her words being the last memory he has before he moves on from this earth. Like, so it's a very sad, happy ending, in my opinion. How it continues, I'm a little more pessimistic. so,
I was trying to warn you, folks. I'm the Charlie in this relationship.
How I feel it continues is that the one positive influence in her life is now gone, now dead. And so I feel like she lashes out even more at this point.
No.
I feel like she just starts lashing out even more. I don't feel like she goes into food at all. If anything, I could see the opposite, her going to like
I could see that
anorexia
too.
or
I could see that too.
like never wanting to even touch food, always being scared of gaining a single pound, just seeing what it did to her father. And so like in a weird way, I can see her developing her own very odd and complicated relationship with food.
Yeah.
And just in general, like the money that he gives her, her trying to go to college or whatever, if she graduates high school, college not working out, her like dropping out, her getting involved in things shouldn't get involved in. And like the one good kind of guiding light that like she was starting to finally have some type of care and feeling for, like it was removed. So the little bit of a father figure she had is now completely gone. And so without any direction and just all that emotion and all that sadness, like unless she gets another positive influence that could like help direct all that emotion, I see it going in a very negative and bad place. And so I kind of see her continuing along. Like if there was a well to, it would then be about her. And then like
Right.
her like relationship with food, her relationship with like the people around her trying to cope and deal with things. And that is like, yeah. So I see Ellie not recovering from that. Especially just seeing her father just die right in front of her. I think it's gonna get worse for her personally.
Dang,
Sorry, y'all.
you're a jerk. No, I would like to believe that Brendan Fraser's last hurrah as Charlie, it's not his last hurrah, but as Charlie's last like final moments there, I'd like to think that it mattered and that it made an impact on her. And I think that this whole week was building up to chinkering, like putting chinks in that tough exterior to kind of find self-acceptance and to live an honest life. So I think that we're gonna disagree here. Which is okay.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last time. Let's move over to our popcorn rating scale. So for those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome. We have this fun rating scale where we give different popcorn sizes. So if we give something a small bucket, think of it as like a 1 to 3, like it's not really worth it. Don't watch it. Don't do it. If we give it like a medium bucket, it's worth the watch. 4 to 6. It's worth the watch, but maybe towards the middle or bottom of your watch list. If we give it a large bucket, like think 7 to 9, like definitely have it towards the top. Like it's really good. If we give it a big bucket, like it's 10 out of 10, get off your couch, turn on the TV, watch this movie right away. Like do what you gotta do to watch this movie right now. So Marquise, I've been the one that's been doing the rankings first the past couple episodes. I would love to know your thoughts. Where does the whale fall on your ranking for a popcorn scale?
Dude, this is not an easy one, dog.
Yeah. And keep in mind, this is an A24 film. This is not an Ari Aster film, but it is an A24
we're gonna have
movie.
to do an episode.
We're gonna have to
like
do
an A24 like overview, kind of like how we feel about A24. Because I was having a conversation with a friend very recently, actually, about just how like as far as we've been concerned, A24 is like the first movie studio that like has a bigger recognition than the movies it makes.
I know,
Like their
right?
brand, like their brand in itself. You stick A24 or something, it's gonna sell. And so like
Yeah, we should just, with how many A24 movies we reviewed, we should just become like an A24 podcast and then just watch all of the
they
A24
put out
movies.
like even though they're like an independent studio or whatever, they put out this like a same amount, if not more, movies than major studios will in a year. Like
Exactly.
they dump a lot. But anywho, yeah, I mean A24, you knew this movie was gonna be fire. Um dang, I'm very like I don't know. I'm going to give this movie
He's pondering. He's thinking hard. I know what I know which two you're thinking between, but
yeah, I
I'm
know you
really,
know it's two.
I'm
I know you
curious.
know it's two.
I'm
I know
curious to
you know it's
see.
two.
I'm curious to see
Oh,
what you're gonna do. Oh,
all
he's
right.
thinking hard.
I'm gonna give it a big bucket.
Oh.
Yep. I think this movie deserves because I was trying to think like if I give it a large bucket, like what could it do better to give me a big bucket? And then I was just like, actually it couldn't. Like it was solid. Like
Yeah.
it's from first scene to the last scene. It's a very tight story. And for me, I think they call it bottle episodes or whatever, where like you keep a whole episode or movie or whatever all basically in one location. Like it's like where you
Yeah.
usually don't have
Yeah.
like money for like multiple locations and whatnot. Like you just like it forces your writing to be better because I have to write a really creative story with basically just one location.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite Tarantino film is like that, like Hateful Eight. Like it's 8 people in a cabin, 3 hours, great dialogue, you know. And so I like films where you have to get really creative with the writing because you're not doing a ton of other like
What
visuals.
was the other movie we saw that took place entirely inside of like a police station lobby?
Police station lobby.
Yeah, like there was like a. It's okay. This is completely derailing, but like I was just like, there was a movie that we saw months ago, maybe at this point years ago, where like there was a mom that was in the hospital that was in the police station lobby because her son was in an accident and she was just trying to find more information about her son. Anyway,
I do
okay.
not have no recollection of this.
Maybe I saw this with my sister. I'm
I
sorry.
have no recollection
I
of
definitely saw this movie with somebody. And
it's
I
fine.
thought it was that movie is what I compared to all these types of things. Sorry about that, everyone. I'm so sorry.
Anywho, for me, this gets a big bucket. Because yeah, like I was like trying to think, I was like, I really creative writing. Visually, it's still really good. And then Brendan Fraser won, I think, Best Actor for his performance for it.
You got an
Um,
Oscar.
yeah, he got an Oscar for it, but won Best Actor. And so like this is like overall like a very, very, very like really good movie. And like it's sad. So you're not probably gonna want to watch this multiple times, you know. But like it's a really good story, great acting, like very
Mhm.
complicated messaging, very complicated relationships, or not complicated, complex relationships and whatnot. And like there's a lot you could take away from it, not just one thing. Like it's not just like a fat shaming or like an anti-food movie by any means. It has way more than food. This movie has to do with coping mechanisms,
Right.
dealing with pain, dealing with sorrow, dealing with the feeling of betrayal, dealing with the feeling of like being unsure of oneself, not confident in oneself, like loving people who are hurting themselves. Like it's just so many themes in this. And it does it with a really good script and great acting and just great cinematography and just like yeah, just in general it was like just like a really and I remember the aspect ratio, if I remember correctly, was like a little like different than most movies or whatever. But yeah, overall, I was like, when I was trying to think like what could make it better to make a big bucket, I was like, nothing. I was like, it just like it obviously wasn't a perfect movie. Like if a 10 out of 10 isn't like a perfect movie for me, but it's like it's up there with like I can't see how this movie could be better. Like it really
Right.
just did what it was supposed to do, really, really,
Exactly.
really, really
Got
well. And
in, went
so
in, got out, got the job done.
yeah, so in my opinion, this is a big bucket. Andy, what are you thinking?
Yo, any movie that makes me cry is gonna get a 10 out of 10 unless it's like tears of just like I absolutely hate this movie, like whatever. This movie is 100% big bucket. Like I can't, as soon as the movie was over, I knew that I was gonna give this movie a big bucket. Like Brendan Frasier, ladies and
Killed it.
gentlemen.
Killed it.
Oh my gosh. Like I already have like a soft spot for Brendan Fraser just because of all the things that he has gone through and the fact that he is able to kind of get a second chance with this movie. He nails it. Something about A24 finding those like older actors, bringing them
Right.
back, giving them like a second chance. Like it's just like it's incredible. Like Brendan Fraser was absolutely great. Sadie Sink, the daughter who most people know her through Stranger Things, like she does a phenomenal job. Like everyone acting wise, best I've seen in a long time. Um, the story is complex, but not overly convoluted to the point where you need to watch it multiple times. I feel like after watching it once, I understand the bulk of it. Of course, I would like to see it again, but not because I want to try to understand it more, but because it is genuinely a very good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the pacing of it all is
Pacing's
really
great.
good.
Yeah.
It's almost 2 hours. Um, and I felt like I didn't really like lose attention throughout it. I feel like it does a really good job. The storytelling is great. And it's like Marquise was saying, like the fact that it's really kind of set all within either within or just outside of his apartment. Like the furthest you get is right outside of his apartment and like his like porch area. So like the fact that it's all there and they do a great job of telling the story there is just phenomenal. Um and like yeah, have your tissues ready when you watch this movie because like it is very emotional and it kind of sneaks up on you. Like I was not expecting to cry at the end of this
Mm-hmm.
movie, but then I'm sitting there like I'm on the computer. Susan's in the living room doing her arts and crafts thing. I'm like sitting there like crying my eyes out. And I'm just like, oh gosh, let me keep it down a little bit. I don't need Susan coming over asking how I'm doing. Um,
Oh.
but it's so good. Like if you, I know that if you've listened to this, I'm assuming you've seen the movie. But if you haven't, like go ahead, listen to this, watch
Mm-hmm.
this movie. Like it is definitely very good.
Incredible
So
film. Incredible.
that being said, we would love to know your thoughts on the continuation of The Whale. Obviously, there's not going to be a sequel, but like, how do you think this is going to end? Do you feel like Charlie's spirit lives on through Ellie, or do you feel like it kind of like the experience of losing Charlie right in front of Ellie, like that kind of like destroys Ellie to the point where she doesn't continue, or is there some sort of in between that you all think? So we'd love to know your thoughts on how this movie continues. If you haven't already, feel free to follow us on Twitter at Pop and Predict, Instagram Pop and Predictions.pod, as well as YouTube. This podcast is on YouTube, so feel free to watch us there and subscribe. Um, and yeah, we are looking forward to next time. We have a special episode next time, so keep out a lookout for that. So,
Mm-hmm.
with that being said, keep popping, everyone.
Peace, y'all.